In March of this year, a UFO was allegedly spotted over the town of Buga, Colombia, zigzagging through the sky in a way that defies the movement of conventional aircraft. Although, to be clear, I don't think it actually defies the way drones move. But all of that being the case, it flew through the sky for a considerable period of time after allegedly encountering some power lines on top of a mountain, although this wasn't filmed either, and then eventually the object came to rest in the hills of Colombia. The excited observers immediately began to look for the object and came up with this, a bizarre-looking sphere with equally bizarre-looking writing all over it, approximately the size of a soccer ball, perhaps a little bit bigger than that. And since that time, the object has been examined by a Dr. Jose Luis Velasquez, a radiologist, who claims that the object has no welds or joints, which would typically indicate human fabrication, and it also features 3 layers of metal-like material and 18 microspheres surrounding a central nucleus that they are calling a chip. Very strange object, at least according to them. Is this finally the real thing or an elaborate hoax? Well, that's what we're going to try to figure out on this special alien bulletin on the Angry Astronaut right now. Good evening, alien enthusiasts, and welcome to a special Angry Alien Bulletin. Wasn't really planning to put out yet another UFO-related video, but there is a story that's trending quite a lot lately, just getting a lot of attention in the media at the moment, and something that, in my opinion, requires at least some attention. And I'm sure a lot of you have probably heard about it at this point. There is a spherical UFO that was allegedly filmed for a considerable amount of time in Colombia, and then it abruptly fell out of the sky, settled down somewhere in the jungle, somewhere in the foliage. Then the people who filmed it went looking for it and came up with this. So the majority of people that have reacted to the fact I announced recently that I was going to be making a video about this, the reaction generally has been pretty negative. A lot of people are thinking that it's fake, and well, I'm probably leaning in that direction myself. But before I make a determination about whether or not something is fake or not, and take a stand on that sort of thing, especially considering that I wasn't there. And also, I have not had an opportunity to examine this object myself in person. I'm very hesitant to completely dismiss something unless I've been in that kind of position, but still, I can at least express some concerns. I've noticed quite a number of things about this case that simply do not add up. And if you've been watching my channel for a long period of time, you can probably tell that I don't support something unless it makes some degree of sense, unless it adds up logically. And there's just a lot of things about this story that are simply illogical and inconsistent. So we're going to go ahead and look at everything that we know about this incident and see just how things stack up. Whether or not this looks like a legitimate UFO encounter, a close encounter of at least the second kind, where a physical evidence of the craft is left behind, or rather just a fraud. And before we go any further, though, I want to make sure that you folks see I got more samples, and this thing is just incredibly cool. Have a look at it real quick. Right there at the bottom, that's the Drake equation down there. It's something I never really noticed on this design before because I didn't create it. Really neat. So the Drake equation, essentially calculating the likelihood of intelligent civilizations throughout the galaxy. And also I have this one with the Hohmann orbital transfer. This is really cool looking stuff. So all the details on that are in the description. Enough merchandise sales. Let's get on with the story. So this is stabilized footage of the object at 50% speed. The unnamed witness, and actually, according to him, there were actually two people who filmed this object, and that's why we have two different clips of the object in flight, the second clip being of the object actually descending towards the foliage. But in any event, he was apparently recording on his camera and enjoying the early morning quiet before this unidentified object appeared and began changing direction with sudden, precise shifts. The sphere-shaped gadget was seen flying above him, darting down the other side of a hill and coming back into the shot. Then it flew around in front of him, moving from left to right in midair. It then flew directly over the city before eventually slowing down and landing on the hill in front of him. It appeared to be sphere-shaped with a silver and gray coating. Incidentally, all of this was reported weeks ago before the object was actually revealed to the public just a couple of days ago. The man recorded himself walking towards the suspected UFO, which was seen on the ground among some brambles, and originally the camera cut off with no further updates on what happened next until weeks later. Now, first of all, this makes me a little bit suspicious just how all of this was put together. First of all, look at the size of this object and how well it shows up on camera in spite of the colossal distances involved. Now let's have a look at a football match with an object that's only a little bit smaller than the supposed recovered object, and look how tiny this object is. I mean, the only reason you can really see it clearly is because it's white, and also the observer is zoomed in on it. And once again, this is on a football pitch. We're only looking at about 100 meters or so here, and when he zooms back, as you just saw there, you lose sight of the object entirely. I'm not sure if this is the same object. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty certain that it isn't. Look at that. Now, once again, I wasn't there. I don't know about the scale of the trees, but that looks much bigger than the recovered object, and also I don't see any features on it whatsoever. Now let's take a closer look at the object in flight again with the stabilized image, and what we are seeing here is a featureless silver sphere. I mean, there appear to be some significant differences between this object and the object that was allegedly recovered. And also, look at this. They're allowing their kids to touch this thing with their bare hands. I would never allow my children to touch an object that I didn't know what it was, especially if it might have been the product of extraterrestrial technology, perhaps even powered by a nuclear reactor of some kind. Why would I allow my kids to touch something like this with their bare hands? I wouldn't even pick it up with my bare hands, and yet over and over again, we see people handling this without gloves as if they know that it's harmless. Either these people are being grossly irresponsible and reckless, or they know something about this object that the rest of us don't. Now, in addition, according to the witnesses, this object collided with power lines before they started filming it, and apparently got a significant jolt of electricity, which might explain why it eventually crashed. Those power lines, by the way, are on the faraway mountains. My question is, how did they even see this thing all the way up where those power lines were in the first place? Doesn't seem very logical to me. An object, again, that's just a little bit bigger than a football being that noticeable over the mountains. And then in addition to that, if we're talking about a sophisticated interstellar civilization that's capable of sending out objects that can frankly defy gravity by means of sophisticated propulsion or perhaps negative mass, something like that, and yet its navigation system is so faulty that it will run into a set of power lines like a kite being being flown by a rather unskilled operator. And then the object itself and the etchings on it. This doesn't look like the kind of etchings that I would expect to find on an object being produced by a civilization far more advanced than us. These sorts of etchings actually could be produced by a skilled student in shop class. Now, David Velez El Potro, one of the individuals who recovered the object, recently spoke on Masan television, hosted by journalist and ufologist Jaime Maussan, whose research has stirred controversy for nearly a decade. He's the alien mummy guy. And incidentally, once again, this guy thinks it's a great idea to just go ahead and handle this thing with his bare hands, as opposed to suiting up and putting on gloves like a real scientist would, which, by the way, thank God, Dr. Velasquez and his team suited up properly before they investigated the object, and, as I said, came to a number of interesting conclusions, saying that it is of artificial origin, no evidence of welding, internal structure composed of high-density elements, but what they also said is that more testing is needed to establish its origins. Also, using AI to assist in deciphering the script, the team interpreted the message to read, quote, "The origin of birth through union and energy in the cycle of transformation, meeting point of unity, expansion, and consciousness, individual consciousness." According to the team, and once again, I'm not sure if the entire team came to this conclusion, quote, "We interpret it as a message to humanity, encouraging a collective shift in consciousness to help Mother Earth, especially considering the current issues with pollution and environmental decline." That being said, though, perhaps they should have interpreted this script as reading, "May the Force be with you," because another AI that examined the script concluded that this is actually a made-up language used in the Star Wars universe. And the Star Wars connection goes a lot deeper than that, guys. There's a sphere in Jedi Fallen Order that isn't called the Buga Sphere. Keep in mind, Buga is the name of the town where this thing was discovered, but rather the Bogano Sphere. And there it is, looking very similar to this sphere that was recovered in Colombia. And the Jedi Eno Cordova has this to say about it, quote, "My friend, I've unearthed a curious artifact, an ancient sphere capable of storing and conducting massive amounts of energy. Whatever civilization crafted this must be the same that created the seemingly impenetrable structure nearby. I believe studying this sphere may yield the information I need to discover who they were and why they built such a landmark, and why they sent another one of these spheres to be found by unsuspecting bystanders in Colombia." Okay, I'm getting a bit sarcastic here, but this is a very interesting coincidence, and by the way, as far as I know, nobody else in the media has drawn this connection. Now, keep in mind, quite a number of conclusions can be found online about this object. Lots of mysterious findings about the internal structure, about how alien it is, how much it differs from anything of human manufacture, etc. The only thing that I find to be credible is what Dr. Jose Velasquez had to say about it, that it's artificial, it shows no evidence of welding, and its internal structure is composed of high-density elements, and most importantly, that more testing is needed to establish its origin, and preferably testing by an independent panel of scientists who have nothing to do with this guy. But how is this faked? Well, first of all, let's have a look at the footage again. You will notice that there's a considerable amount of background noise, passing trucks or machinery, something along those lines, creating a fair amount of noise. And in my opinion, it's noise being used to mask another sound. This is a drone prototype being propelled by compressed air. It's little more, actually, than a Mylar balloon being pushed along by a small engine. Now, granted, this is an indoor test, but if it was taken outside, it would be subject to the whims of the wind, meaning that it would just simply get pushed along, which is also what is happening to this object. And the way to make it drop suddenly would be to simply turn off the motor in the compressed air, and the thing should drop like a rock because it's not like there's any helium inside it. So does this mean that all spherical UAPs are actually fraudulent objects, prototype drones of some kind? Well, no, because an object like this would not do very well at high altitude like this particular object. Now, if it were moving exactly in conjunction with the wind, then we could presume that this was a Mylar balloon of some kind. But if it were moving against the wind or perpendicular to the wind or something along those lines, then we have a legitimate UFO. Or if it suddenly changes direction and moves off at high speed, all this means is that we have to be a lot more discerning about our witnesses, about the circumstances, and about the claims being made about any given sighting. Frauds run rampant in ufology. They did back in the 1950s, and they do today as well. So once again, to make my position absolutely clear, I'm really hesitant to totally dismiss something, to completely reject a story as being a fraud if I wasn't there, if I haven't had an opportunity to examine the object in question, and I also didn't actually witness the UFO. But still, as you saw in the video, there are quite a few ways that this could have been faked, lots of inconsistencies, and honestly, this just doesn't look like the product of a hyper-advanced civilization to me. A civilization that can cross the gulf of interstellar space and send advanced spacecraft to pay us a call just doesn't add up. And if something doesn't add up to me, that means there's probably something wrong with it. I do my best to look at things from a logical perspective. And once again, that's why I tend to cover stories that involve military witnesses, military pilots who have a lot of experience and no reason to create a fraud or to cook up some kind of scheme. And also, their stories are supported with footage that isn't faked and with radar data and other information, additional sources that support the story. All of these kinds of things add up to me. Things that involve witnesses that don't have a great deal of credibility behind them, or at least not a whole lot of background in order to confirm their credibility, and also they don't have any other evidence to back up their story other than, of course, this sphere that they collected, which, in my opinion, probably could have been whipped together inside of shop class, just doesn't appear to be all that sophisticated to me. But once again, I think that it's worth it to send a team of investigators to have a look at this object and to examine it in great detail and determine its validity or not. I think that it would be irresponsible to completely reject it without actually examining the artifact. But once again, I have a feeling that if we did do that, I'd be willing to put at least $50 against pretty favorable odds that once that team was done with their work, they would all say that they wasted their time. Thank you very much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and also please consider supporting this channel. All the details on how to do that are in the description. Until next time, stay angry about space.